Hey guys, and welcome back. In this video we're going to be talking about the ACC college basketball preview and predictions for the 2016-2017 campaign. And as an aside note, if you are interested in free and premium pick content daily for this upcoming college basketball season, please check out stumpthespread.com. I'll have a link to that website in the description. But now getting more into the meat of this video, there's 15 teams in this conference, and we're basically just going to be going through the list from 15 all the way up to 1 in terms of how we think these teams are going to be finishing in the conference. And as we reveal each spot on the list, we're just going to do kind of a quick run through and overview of the team. So getting started with this, at number 15 we have Boston College. Last year the Eagles went just 7-25 overall, and they went an embarrassing 0-18 in conference. This group returns 3 starters. 2 players that Boston College is really going to lean on are Jerome Robinson and AJ Turner. These guys were freshmen last year, and they kind of worked their way up, and now they're going to be leaned on more this year to have even more of a presence for this team. At the very least, Boston College can hope that they make some progress, because you really can't get any worse than 0-18 in conference play. Boston College had some veteran experience last year with Clifford and Carter in their lineup, but the team had 10 freshmen who saw playing time, and with such a large group of freshmen, obviously you're going to get guys to transfer just because they're not getting the kind of playing time that they're hoping to get. And some of those freshmen have obviously moved up to be sophomores this year, but this is still going to be a really young team filled with freshmen and sophomore that are just going to kind of be going through a lot of growing pains this year. At number 14 on the list, we have Georgia Tech. The Yellow Jackets actually had a pretty respectable campaign in 2015-2016. They went 21-15 overall, and also 8-10 in conference play. Unfortunately for the Yellow Jackets, they returned just 1 starter. Georgia Tech brings in a new coach this year with Josh Pastner, who comes over from Memphis. This is kind of exciting for the program to get what's viewed as a higher caliber hire as their new head coach. This squad ended last year losing in the NIT quarterfinals, and it was pretty much make the tournament or make a head coaching change. And Georgia Tech, they loaded up their team last year with transfers, which allowed them to have a better season than many were expecting. But with many of their starters moving on, this is going to be pretty much a rebuild job for Pastner right out of the gate. Pastner has a track record of being a great recruiter, and with Georgia Tech being in a basketball-rich city like Atlanta, the team is hoping that they can win in recruiting in the next few years to really restock this squad with elite talent, or at least higher talent than what Georgia Tech has been able to gain in recent years. There's still a lot of question marks surrounding this roster, but Pastner's trying to coach this group up to be a really tough, hard-nosed team, but with really weak depth and also one of the weaker front courts in the ACC, it's just going to be a really long and difficult season for this Georgia Tech squad. Moving into number 13 on the list, we have Wake Forest. Wake Forest was hoping to take a step forward last year as a program, but that simply wasn't the case, as the team actually went from 13 wins the year prior to just 11 wins, going 11-20 overall, and also just 2-16 in the ACC. Wake Forest will be turning 3 starters. Wake Forest ended their campaign last year losing in the ACC first round. The departure of top players like Thomas and Miller McIntyre kind of signal what's going to be more of a rebuilding year for Wake Forest, which is another reason why we have them so low on this list. And also, with losing 2 of your best players and going just 2-16 in conference last year, that doesn't really bode well for the team. Wake Forest has made positive strides under head coach Manning over his first 2 seasons coaching the team, but it really doesn't show in their record. This is kind of the Demon Deacons heading into the second phase of the rebuilding process under Manning, as this roster is pretty much stockpiled with the players that he's recruited, so it's going to be interesting to see where this team goes in the future under head coach Manning. At number 12 on the list, we have the Miami Hurricanes. Miami lived up to expectations and then some last year, going 27-8 overall and an impressive 13-5 in the ACC. This group will be returning 3 starters. Miami ended last year losing in the Sweet 16. Jim Larrañaga has had a lot of success in his 5 seasons at Miami, and last year the team ended in the RPI at 7th, which is actually only the second highest that they finished under Larrañaga. 4 years ago they finished 4th in the RPI. Losing veterans like Angel Rodriguez, Sheldon McLennan, and Tony Jakiri will be a bit difficult for the Canes to overcome this year, and which is why we have them dropping quite far in the standings compared to what we saw from this group last year. Larrañaga has done a really good job of exploiting the transfer market, and this Miami group, their strength will be coming in the backcourt this season. Larrañaga brings in some really strong recruits with Houle and Brown, and also this group has reloaded a bit with transfers, but continuity could be an issue for this group as they kind of work through the season. Expect Miami to get better as the year goes on, but in what's a loaded ACC conference, it's going to be really hard for this group to move up in the standings. At number 11 on the list, we have Notre Dame. Notre Dame made a really strong run last year, going 24-12 overall and 11-7 in the ACC. This group returns 3 starters, which lost in the NCAA Elite 8 last year, nearly making it to the Final Four. Notre Dame remains a pretty veteran group with guys like VJ Beacham and Steve Vastaria coming back as senior captains. Losing top players like Demetrius Jackson and Zach Auguste will be difficult for the Irish to overcome this year, but this squad still has a lot of intangibles with a more veteran roster. And even though they might not have the most talent in the ACC, this group has at least the potential to move up and maybe even make a run into the NCAA tournament as a bubble team. At number 10 on the list, we have the Pitt Panthers. Pittsburgh had a solid campaign last year, going 21-12 overall and 9-9 in conference. This group returns 2 starters, and they will bring in a new head coach. Kevin Stallings will take over for Jamie Dixon, who really built a successful program. Stallings left Vanderbilt this past offseason after having a season that really wasn't even close to what people expected out of the Commodores last year. Luckily for Stallings, the cupboard isn't completely bare at Pittsburgh, with returning veterans like Jamel Artist and Michael Young, who have all-ACC caliber of play. Pittsburgh has been one of the more consistent programs in the ACC, finishing in the top 100 RPI of the last 6 years. Stallings has the ability to start 4 seniors, which is really a nice thing to have for his first year at Pittsburgh. Having a veteran roster is really helpful, especially early on in the season, but the backcourt isn't as solid as most of the teams in the ACC, but the front court is strong enough that Pittsburgh should be able to stay in most of their games in conference play. The rebuild at Pittsburgh will really happen for Stallings, maybe not this year, but in the upcoming 1 or 2 seasons once some of the veterans move on. At number 9 on the list, we have NC State. We're not as high on NC State as a lot of people are coming into the year, even though the Wolfpack do have some really strong blue chip freshmen that are coming in. The loss of a guy like Cat Barber, who was everything for this team last year, averaging 23.5 points per game, and also Caleb Martin, who was also a double-figure scorer, will hurt. And even with Cat Barber and Caleb Martin really doing a lot of the team's offensive work, the Wolfpack were still only able to go 16-17 overall and 5-13 in the ACC. But this group does return 3 other starters, and they finished last season losing in the second round of the ACC tournament. NC State will hitch their ride to freshman point guard Dennis Smith, who's really an elite prospect and should do amazing things in the ACC this year. Other than Dennis Smith, other guys to look for as possible starters, you got Terry Henderson at shooting guard, Maverick Rowan at small forward, who's another underclassman, and then you have a veteran in Abdul Malik Abu as the big man at power forward. And then another guy to look out for is center Omer Yurtseven, who is a 7-foot freshman who's also a really highly touted player coming into the program. So NC State obviously has the ability and the talent to work their way up into the top 25 and into the upper tier of the conference, but losing a guy like Cat Barber is never easy to get over, and this team is going to have to work in some of their new pieces as they try to formulate a winning plan. The team last year finished under 500, which was a disappointment, and it's going to be interesting to see if NC State can surpass that disappointing result, especially considering that this team no longer has a guy that averaged over 23 points per game. So this is a team to look out for, but right now we have them projected as 9th in this loaded conference. Moving up to number 8, we have the Clemson Tigers. We're pretty high on Clemson, and we think they could finish even maybe 2 or 3 notches higher than 8th, but this is more of a conservative estimate for them right now. Clemson really surprised in the ACC last year, so they went 17-14 overall, but 10-8 in conference, and this group is returning 3 starters. Clemson finished last year losing in the second round of the ACC tournament. Last year, as their home facilities were getting updated, the Tigers had to play in Greenville, which is about 35 minutes away for the Tigers, and they also had to practice in high school gyms, which isn't ideal. So this squad is going to be playing in a more home-friendly environment this year after pretty much playing all of their games away in the 2015-2016 campaign, and that can have a really positive effect on this group. Clemson has always been really well known for their defense, and that should be another really strong strength for this group coming into the 2016-2017 campaign. And with guys like Shelton Mitchell, Marquise Reed, and Elijah Thompson becoming eligible after sitting out a year, will be just a great influx of talent and depth for this group. And then obviously all-ACC forward Jerron Blossomgame is the big difference maker here. If he can have another step up and play, he has the ability to be an all-ACC forward again. And, you know, having an elite guy like Jerron Blossomgame on your team will help Clemson be able to compete with some of the upper-tier teams in the ACC. At number 7 on the list, we have the Syracuse Orange. Syracuse had an incredible run last year, going 23-14 overall and 9-9 in conference, and not losing until the Final Four last year. This group only returns 2 starters, and many thought that the Orange would fall considerably in the standings given the amount of talent that moved on, but the Orange were able to grab a number of high-profile either transfers or recruits, which has really bolstered this roster and has made them a potential top 25 team again coming into this season. Some of the top gets for Syracuse were Colorado State graduate transfer John Gillen, as well as big man highly touted freshman Torian Thompson, and then as well Andrew White coming over after having a really great year with Nebraska. All of these guys should make impacts right away on this team to add to guys like Juwan Coleman, Tyler Roberson, and Pascal Chukwu. Syracuse has some of the best depth in the ACC now, with pretty much 2 very talented players at every position on the floor. Obviously, making the Final Four again this year would be another amazing feat for Syracuse, given the surprising run that they made last year. But this group, you definitely can't count them out, and with great head coaching, we expect this group to finish in the top half of the ACC. At number 6 on the list, we have the Virginia Tech Hokies. Virginia Tech is clearly making consistent strides under head coach Buzz Williams. The Hokies last year went 20-15 overall and a very respectable 10-8 in the ACC. This group returns 3 starters, and last year this group ended their year losing in the second round of the NIT. This Virginia Tech squad has really strong depth as well as a tremendous home court advantage, and some guys to look out for on this team are senior Seth Allen, who's coming off a 15-point-per-game average this past year, as well as junior Justin Bibbs, who averaged about 12 points per game last year. The freshmen really helped turn things around at Virginia Tech last year, and that's a really good sign coming into this campaign with guys like Robinson, Clark, and Blackshear, who were all better or just as good as advertised. Now all those freshmen that helped the team last year are sophomores, and that just means that this group should take another step forward. And coming off a 10-win ACC campaign, you'd imagine that this group could only go up from this point, which is why we have them so high on the list at number 6. All of those freshmen are now sophomore at Virginia Tech, and with the increase of experience and now depth that this team has, that should only bolster the spot where this group finished last year, which was tied for 7th in the conference with 10 wins. Getting even up to 11 or 12 wins would be pretty amazing for this group, and definitely a possibility considering the experience that this group now has. At number 5 on the list, we have the Florida State Seminoles. Florida State is well known for underachieving from high preseason expectations, and this group could definitely fall into that category again this year, but there's no denying the Seminoles have the kind of elite talent that can get this group to finish in the upper tier of this loaded ACC conference. Last year, Florida State was hoping to make a run at the NCAA tournament, but the team went on to go just 20-14 overall and 8-10 in conference. And this group will be returning just 2 starters, but Florida State is also bringing in a lot of highly touted freshman recruits. Florida State finished last year losing in the second round of the NIT. Starters not returning for Florida State include guard Malik Beasley, center Boris Bojanovsky, as well as forward Monte Brandon. Projected starters for Florida State are returning veteran point guard Xavier Rathan Mays, as well as sophomore Terrence Mann, sophomore Dwayne Bacon, power forward Jonathan Isaac, who's a highly touted freshman, as well as center Michael Ojo, who is the senior big man for this group. Head coach Hamilton has clearly upgraded the talent with the last two recruiting classes at Florida State, and as a result, this group has some of the better depth in the conference, as well as just frontline, strong, talented players in their starting lineup. Florida State really needs to avoid getting off to another slow start, or this ship might sink with a number of underclassmen leading the team. So for the Seminoles to get off to a hot start, that's really something to look forward to from this group. And if they're not able to accomplish that, then perhaps this isn't the kind of team that can finish in the top half of the ACC. But just based on talent alone, as well as some experience mixed in, we think that the Florida State Seminoles have a good shot at finishing in the upper tier of the standings. At number 4 on the list, we have the Virginia Cavaliers. This might be a bit high for the Virginia Cavaliers, given this group loses really strong players like Malcolm Brogdon, Anthony Gill, as well as guys coming off the bench like Mike Tobey and Evan Nolte. But one thing we've learned from Virginia in recent years is you really can't underestimate this group. They always bring that defensive effort, and with one of the consistently best defenses in the conference, you always have a chance to win every single game. Just in the last 3 years, Virginia has finished the season in the top 10 of the RPI, and this past year, Virginia finished off their season losing in the NCAA Elite Eight. Virginia has a pretty strong starting lineup with point guard London Parentes, as well as shooting guard Devin Hall, small forward Isaiah Wilkins, and then the big transfer get from Memphis is Austin Nichols. And then starting at center is going to be Jack Salt. Virginia always has the intangibles as well as that really strong defensive play and effort. And although this group might not have the best depth in the ACC, just based on their frontline talent and their physical style of play, we think that the Cavaliers have a pretty good shot at finishing in the upper tier of the conference again this year. Coming in at number 3 on the list is the Louisville Cardinals. Louisville actually had a really strong campaign last year despite not being able to go to the NCAA tournament. This was a really sad revelation for Louisville, considering they brought in really talented transfer players like Trey Lewis and Damian Lee. And even though both of these guards had really strong campaigns, they weren't able to finish their college career in the NCAA tournament, which is pretty sad for those two guys that came over from smaller programs. Last year, Louisville won a very solid 23-8 overall, as well as 12-6 in the conference. And the team finished 16th in the RPI. Over the last 5 years, Louisville has finished in the top 20 of the RPI by season's end. Despite losing some of their best players from last year, Louisville continues to have some of the best depth in the conference, as well as really strong intangibles. And this group maybe doesn't have the best starting lineup in the ACC, but strong depth is really going to help this group. Right now, the projected starters for Louisville at point guard, we have Quentin Snyder, shooting guard Donovan Mitchell, small forward Deng Adel, power forward Jalen Johnson, and then at center, Megong Mathiang. There was speculation that Rick Pitino might be walking away from Louisville, but with this kind of talent, as well as a tremendous basketball facility to play in, this really wasn't going to happen for those that knew Pitino and were close to the situation. This could be a really special year for Louisville, and built on the strength of their depth, this squad has a really strong chance to finish high in the ACC standings. At number 2 on the list, we have the North Carolina Tar Heels. Last year, North Carolina had an incredible campaign, going 33-7 overall, as well as 14-4 in the ACC, which was good enough for first in the conference. North Carolina returns 3 starters from a team that lost in the NCAA championship game last year in what was one of the best finals games that I've ever seen in my life. Obviously, losing starters like Marcus Page and Bryce Johnson are big blows to this group, but NC really does return a lot of strong, talented veteran players, not only to their starting lineup, but this group also has some pretty solid depth. Right now, the projected starters are going to be Nate Britt at point guard, Joel Berry as well in the backcourt, and then you have veteran small forward Justin Jackson, power forward Isaiah Hicks, and center Kennedy Meeks. There's just so much talent and experience in this starting lineup that it's really hard to see North Carolina slipping at all in the ACC standings after finishing first last year. The Tar Heels are a proven squad with 6 regular contributors back from last season's team. Clearly, they're going to miss the production and leadership of Johnson and Page, but this group is, they're not rebuilding, they're reloading, and with the kind of depth and talent that this squad has, both in the backcourt and the front court, as well as some pretty solid head coaching, this group is definitely geared up for another run at potentially the Final Four or even the championship. And topping out our list, we have the Duke Blue Devils. Duke is a really popular pick to finish not only first in the ACC, but also ranked #1 in the nation, because this group is one of Mike Krzyzewski's best freshman classes, and to pair that with the talent that's already on Duke, this is just going to be a really dangerous team. Obviously, losing guys like Brandon Ingram, Marshall Plumlee, and Derek Thornton hurt to some extent, but it's not even really going to be noticed too much with this Duke squad, considering how much other talent that they return, as well as the talent of the incoming freshman class. Right now, the projected starters are going to be point guard Grayson Allen, and Grayson Allen is one of the front runners to win the ACC Player of the Year award. And then at shooting guard, you have veteran Matt Jones. At small forward, Jason Tatum, who is a highly regarded freshman recruit. Power forward Harry Giles, another freshman coming in to play on day 1. And then veteran rock center Emile Jefferson. Duke is solid up and down their roster, not only in their backcourt but also the front court. And then this group also has some of the best depth in the conference. And pile that on with an amazing coaching staff and an amazing home court advantage and just the pedigree of the Duke basketball program. And this group looks like they're geared up and ready to go to make a run at the ACC title. Alright, so this has been pretty much our list from #1 going down to #15 of the ACC standing projections for the 2016-2017 season. To finish off this video, we're going to give our take on some players that could make a run at the all-conference team or maybe even be the conference player of the year. So guys to look out for the all-conference team are going to be Dwayne Bacon from Florida State, Jaron Blossomgame from Clemson, London Parentes from Virginia, Joel Berry from North Carolina, and then Grayson Allen from Duke. And we also feel like Grayson Allen has the best shot at winning the Player of the Year, because not only is he going to be the best player on Duke, but also Duke is likely to finish first in the conference, and whoever finishes first in the conference usually gets the nod for the Conference Player of the Year. Last year, the ACC got 7 teams into the NCAA tournament, and this year we think the conference is even better, and we could see potentially 7 to 9 teams, or maybe even 10, if Pittsburgh and NC State have really solid out-of-conference campaigns, as well as Clemson. This conference could get up to 10 teams, especially with how well the ACC performed in the NCAA tournament last year. That really gives a nod to this conference, and we'll have a carryover effect into this year. This has been our ACC standing projections video, and for more conference projection videos in the coming days, you can just subscribe. So thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.